on, guys? My name is Tyler Lauder, and I'm joined yet again with Aaron Ben. This is Second and Short. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, and I'm ready to get rolling.
Yeah, for me, it is a nice, cool, calm Friday night. And I'm ready to get rolling too, man. And
That is so sexy.
yeah, last week we had a really good week talking about the AFC sleepers. We covered the Denver Broncos, Oakland Raiders, so some really good stuff from that side. But this week, it's all about the NFC sleepers, and we're gonna start off with your pick, and that is the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, let me tell you, just first of all, I was really having some doubts about this when I was researching the episode. But I think I'm okay with that. At first I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have picked them. But I think everything's going to be okay.
Well, why don't you break down their 2019 for us before we dive into why they'll be a sleeper in the NFC?
Last year was their first season under their new head coach, Cliff Kingsbury. They controversially took Kyler Murray number one after taking Josh Rosen the first round the year before that. Kyler Murray looked pretty promising his first year, finished with 3,700 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, passer rating of 87.4, added over 500 yards on the ground with 4 touchdowns rushing. They started the season with a tie against the Lions, a close loss to the Ravens, who eventually had the best record in the league. But overall, they ended up with a 5-10-1 record. Their most notable win was beating the Seahawks in Seattle in Week 16. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Offense was ranked 21st in the league. Defense was last in the league, talking about in terms of yards per game. Talking about some key additions that they made this year. We all know the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, so we had an episode about him. You can go ahead and check that out by clicking the link there. And then they also added pass rusher Jordan Phillips from the Bills. Is going to play on the defensive line. He had kind of a breakout season last year with 9.5 sacks. And they added some more depth at positions like linebacker, and we'll talk about that a bit later too.
Yeah, on their 2019, getting 5 wins and a tie is, in most eyes, people look at that as like a down season. It netted them the 8th overall pick, which we'll talk about, as well as their other defensive additions when they drafted Isaiah Simmons. But that's an improvement over the 3 wins in the year they had before. I mean, not only did they have, like we said, more wins plus a tie, but they were competitive in more games than they were the year before, all with a rookie quarterback.
I think it was a lot better than I was expecting as well. I kind of had them going like 2 or 3 wins like the year before that. So,
well, the biggest issue here for this team, I mean, outside of like Kyler Murray's growth and development, is their defense. Their defense needs to clean up a lot of their past defense. And if they can clear up some of that stuff, I think that's where we're going to start seeing some success. Because obviously, we already know Cliff Kingsbury is an offensive mind. He's got his offensive weapons all over the place. Vance Joseph is here to clean up this defense, and that's what he has to do to get these Cardinals over the hump. So, with all that being said, let's dive into this sleeper team, and let's talk about the offense first. So Kingsbury is a very interesting cat because he's one of those guys that I feel like just give him weapons. Just give the guy weapons, and he will create an offense that is just awesome and dynamic, and he will help Kyler Murray be explosive in the NFL. And that's exactly what they did this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, they're really trying to prove that you can bring the air raid offense into the NFL, and I think it showed some promise last year. Then, what people are saying a lot about Kyler Murray was that he was missing that true number one elite top tier wide receiver, and then so they went out and they got him, DeAndre Hopkins. They've got Larry Fitzgerald, who's still, after 30 years in the league, he's still reliable, still dependable.
Larry Legend.
Yeah, he is a legend, to be honest. And then you've got a bunch of young guys with a lot of talent, like Christian Kirk is coming into his own. You've got Andy Isabella is also decent depth. I mean, you've got like these 2 veteran wide receivers. in Hopkins and Fitzgerald. And then you've got a bunch of younger guys with a lot of potential. Kenyon Drake was also a very pleasant surprise last year. They traded for him. He came in, played very well. He's good at catching the ball out of the backfield as well.
Yeah, and on top of that, they also went out and they drafted Josh Jones to play right tackle for them. And, it kind of will complete their offensive line. I mean, they still have Justin Pugh, J.R. Sweezy, and obviously DJ Humphries and Mason Cole. The line is slowly coming together better and better.
Yeah, I mean, I think they Humphries is going to stay the starter. They got, like you said, they drafted Josh Jones. I think they're expecting Jones to be able to start, but in case he's like struggling or kind of not ready at the beginning, they also signed Kelvin Beachum, who's a reliable veteran who can start some games at the tackle position. So I mean, the line is not great. They're returning both of their starters from last year at guard. Their center is
I have Mason Cole.
The center is Mason Cole, who started all 16 games when A.Q. Shipley went down a couple of years ago. It's not saying a whole lot because that was a year when Josh Rosen started and the offensive line was just very, very bad. But their offensive coaching wasn't very good that year either. So we'll see. After a year of experience starting, a year of kind of sitting behind A.Q. Shipley, we'll see if Mason Cole can kind of be the center, the reliable center that they need there.
Now, do you think that this offensive line is going to be able to sustain and hold up and protect Kyler Murray? Because I was just talking with some other people, some friends of mine, and one guy said he loves this guy. He loves Kyler Murray, but he's afraid that it's going to be like RG3 all over again, where he doesn't get the protection he needs. He tries scrambling too much, and he's going to get hurt eventually.
Well, the thing with Kyler Murray is that in comparison to RG3, Kyler Murray is a lot better at throwing the ball. He knows when to scramble, when to throw, and he doesn't take hits that RG3 seemed to take, if I remember watching him play.
Yeah, and I don't think it's and just for anybody out there that's going to comment on this is not a direct comparison. I think it's just like quarterbacks who have a second nature to scramble, and RG3 is the most recent in my eyes that has been injured, and that kind of had that setback that was supposed to be this elite talent.
I mean, Murray last season he ranked first in the league for taking sacks that were his fault as opposed to the offensive line. But I think that would be something. So you could see it's not really the offensive line that's causing these sacks. I think he is better at avoiding hits than RG3 was, and I think he'll be able to, as he gains experience, it's going to be something that is going to improve on as well.
Now, one position that we haven't even talked about, but I feel like is the biggest hole on their offense is the tight end position. The Arizona Cardinals, for as long as I can remember, have never had that reliable tight end. That even if it's just like a big name presence, there's never been that guy. And it appears to be the next man up, if all things go as they should, is going to be Max Williams, the former tight end out of the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, they got Max Williams in place now, which he has shown potential. He wasn't really used a whole lot in Baltimore. That was kind of their offensive system. And then by the time they did start getting the tight ends involved a bit more, that was when they had drafted Hayden Hurst and Andrews and all of those fellas. This is the second year with the team. Last year, he only had 200 yards catching. We'll see if he can up that. We'll see if he can get that up. I mean, maybe this will be the year that he kind of comes into his own.
Yeah, and I feel like with how many weapons they have on the outside, that the tight end position isn't a huge need. I've just always, and I've said this before, and I'll continue to say this, whenever a quarterback enters the league or he moves into a new system, I think having a reliable tight end is the best thing for him. Granted, he gets DeAndre Hopkins and Larry Fitzgerald, two guys that literally will catch everything that he throws their way.
Yeah, I mean, you look at young quarterbacks; they love having their reliable tight end. Look at Jimmy Garoppolo and in
Kittle.
what's it, Kittle. Look at like if I'm taking an example from my team, Marcus Mariota. You loved having Delaney Walker to pass the ball to back in the day.
Cam Newton had Greg Olson, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's really a young quarterback's best friend is a reliable tight end, solid hands who can get open.
Now, with all that being said, the thing that I think the offense needs to improve on the most is clearly the time of possession. Time of possession over the whole NFL, they ranked 31st last year. And that is something that needs to increase, obviously, because the longer you hold on the ball, the less time the other team has it. They need to finish more drives. The passing touchdowns were like 25th in the NFL, but rushing wise, they did very well. And I think that'll continue to go up. Kenyon Drake is a guy that is finally getting his due and his touches in the league, and he's showing what he can do when he gets those. And I think with them adding Hopkins, you know, and they already have Larry in the second year with Murray, and same thing with Kirk. I honestly think that the passing touchdowns are obviously going to go up, and they're going to hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and they're just going to finish drives more consistently. And I think that is just going to naturally happen.
Yeah, and if we're talking about time of possession, I think what really affected that this year was the defense. If we're transitioning into the defense right now, because they could not get off the field. Teams were having long drives against them. They couldn't get turnovers. 30th in the league with just 7 interceptions. So, I mean, you're not getting turnovers. You're allowing long drives. Of course, you're going to have lower time of possession. So I think that's going to improve, and we'll tell you about that why. We're going to talk about the defense right now.
Well, let's go ahead and switch over there. So the biggest thing from this defense right now is the additions. They obviously were not a very strong team defensively last year. You already touched on it. Time possession, they were dead last. Interceptions, almost dead last. The amount of passing yards, their pass defense was almost dead last. Their total points allowed was like 28. So not dead last, but it's too close for comfort. What they did excel in is rushing touchdowns. They didn't allow a lot of rushing touchdowns last year. They were 17th in sacks, mainly in thanks to Chandler Jones just beasting it. But this defense kind of has a lot of new faces. Where I talked about Jordan Phillips, Isaiah Simmons. They drafted it at the 8th overall pick. Devondre Campbell from Atlanta. All these guys are kind of getting added in, and they're all improving this defense right away. It's really interesting because it's like we're controlling a game of Madden right now, and it's like, all right, what do we need? Let's get a little bit younger, top tier wide receiver. Let's go out and let's draft our right tackle and draft a stud linebacker, and let's go sign some good defensive players. And they just got everything they kind of needed, some little holes they had, and they kind of just filled it all. My question to you is, before we dive into stats and statistics and everything, is will all these new additions be able to mesh well enough? That's kind of the concern. We had this happen. Oh man, please correct me. It was 2009, 2010, the Philadelphia Eagles. Remember that? They went out and bought like everybody on defense and nobody meshed together.
I don't remember what year that was, but yeah. Was that the Dream Team year? No.
That was the Dream Team where they had all these stud defenders and it just didn't really work out. So that's what I'm asking here. Is this going to happen again, or do you think these play styles will mesh?
Well, that's all dependent on the defensive coaching. Vance Joseph has another year here to kind of get everything put together. If you want to look at like what this defense is capable of, you need to take a look at the Week 16 game from last year that I mentioned earlier. Cardinals against Seahawks. The Cardinals held Russell Wilson to 169 yards passing, 50% completion rate. I mean, they had, I think it was 5 sacks on the day, and they basically just came in and dominated the Seahawks in their own house defensively. It was the first time. Oh yes, Chandler Jones had 4 sacks just by himself. So it was the first time all season we saw we saw this Cardinals team come in and just like be fun to watch on defense. Fotu and Rashard Lawrence, both in the fourth round, drafted a couple big hefty boys to play defense. That's gonna help him out a lot. And then Isaiah Simmons, if he can come in and be the top tier player that he's supposed to be right off the bat, they're gonna just have a great day with him. They've got like all of the new guys they brought in, like you mentioned, are gonna be impact guys. I mean, they had some injuries last year. Patrick Peterson was suspended for 6 games. Robert Alford, their second cornerback, was out last year with an injury. He's out this year as well, so they're gonna have to cover for him.
I mean, yeah, Jordan Hicks had a really good year last year statistically, as did Chandler Jones. Same with Baker, and actually, Budda Baker is maybe my favorite safety to watch in the NFL. I just like everything the guy does. I like his play style. I like how he can be super aggressive, and I like how he can kind of read the offenses. Now, here's my question. They drafted Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson, who everybody said could go as high as number 3 or 4, 5, and really anywhere outside like the first 2 picks, this guy could go. And here's my question for you. How does Isaiah Simmons fit in here? Because everybody talks about how versatile he is. And don't get me wrong, we love versatility in the NFL. However, guys that are very, that can adapt and play multiple roles, they still need to dominate a said position, at least in my eyes. So where does he fit in on this offense? Because they are loaded at linebacker. They're pretty decent at I mean, is he going to play strong safety and be a box safety kind of? Like, where do you see this going?
Well, I remember reading about it after the draft. I think the Cardinals had said that they wanted Isaiah Simmons to play a linebacker, to play his natural position, and that's where they were going to use him. And I know Vance Joseph said recently that that's going to be most of the time he's going to be at that position. But he also mentioned that they're not going to be afraid to kind of move him around and use him wherever they need him, like wherever he's needed at that certain period of time. So I think you can expect to see him most of the time at the linebacker position, at the inside linebacker position. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him covering deep at some point and playing like he did in college, like put him at safety on this play, at slot cornerback at another play. So I think we'll see him moving around, but I don't think as much as he did in college.
I mean, yeah, if he does as much as he did in college, that would concern me for his development. Just because as much as everybody wants to say like they're stars already and they're studs, like it's still hard to transition from college to the NFL, regardless of where you play. So that's the only concern of mine. I would want him to come in and kind of solidify a spot, and once he is kind of set in stone in a spot, then be more, able to adapt to different situations and play in different positions in the NFL. Because I mean, if you're switching over and you're playing in that nickel to cover, that slot receiver, the slot receiver is a lot more agile in the NFL than they were in college.
Yeah, and they're a lot more important in the NFL now as well. So
what has to improve on this defense statistically for them to have an immediate impact? I mean, we're talking interceptions, sacks, time possession, passing. Like, what is it? What's the one thing?
For me, the most important thing that they have to improve on, and we mentioned it before when we talked about time of possession, that's the turnovers. And they were 30th in the league in interceptions. That's something that with 2 like superstar defensive backs, you would expect that to be higher. Sacks, they were only 17th in the league. Sacks a lot of times leads to turnovers, fumbles. Pressure leads to bad throws. I mean, they've got to get more pressure on the cornerback, and I think Kennard can help with that. Jordan Shipley will also help with that. Jordan Phillips, sorry. And then, I mean, they were like 4th in the league in forced fumbles. Again, interception, sacks, they have to go up. You have to get your turnover numbers ahead up in the league.
And I think the thing is right there, they all kind of relate to each other, because if you're getting interceptions or you're getting sacks and you're applying more pressure on the quarterback, passing numbers are going to go down for that opposing offense, and time of possession is going to go down. I think they just they need to control the clock a lot better. They need to overall dominate more on defense to wear out opposing offenses to the point that time of possession doesn't become a factor. It's just simple. I mean, if you are allowing offenses to be on the field more than any other team in the NFL, they're going to have more opportunities to score. So you just have to cut that down. If teams have less chances to score, you have a better chance to win the game. I feel like whenever I say things like that, it sounds like I'm being really smart and I'm reinventing the wheel. And then I finish the sentence and I just like hear John Madden's voice inside my head.
Yeah, it's pretty Madden-esque. I like it. For our simpler fans out there.
Yeah, for the fellow Tylers out there. Alrighty, let's move into schedule here as we kind of get towards the end of this episode. The Arizona Cardinals this year will be playing against, their own division. That's 6 games. And then they're going to be taking on the NFC East. So Cowboys, Redskins, Giants, and Eagles. They also get the AFC East as well. So they're going to be playing against Patriots and Buffalo. And then they get the worst teams in their division last year from Detroit and Carolina. Give me a schedule look at a predictions, where's this team going to be this year? What is the one game that they've got to win? Or maybe it's a game that is going to be a surprise or an upset. And then kind of give me a final season prediction.
Now, with the playoffs now having 7 teams making the playoffs, I think it's possible. But they play in a very tough division. For me, they have 2 games that are critical. The first one is week 7 against the Seahawks at home. They've got to win 1 game against the Seahawks at least. And they've got to take 1 game against the Niners this year. And that's going to be, I think, week 16 at home against the Niners. I think that's also going to be critical. That's towards the end of the season. That could have some serious playoff implications. Maybe San Francisco might be playing for playoff seeding. In terms of overall record, I can see them going. I would say I have their very ceiling at 9-7. Something more realistically would probably be 7-9, 8-8. But if they don't pull things together, I could see them going as low. I mean, they could do pretty much the same thing as last year, like 5-11 or 4-12, something like that. So even though I did pick them as my wild card dark horse, I think it's not a sure thing at all, but I do think they have the potential.
Yeah, and I think that's very fair. 7-9 is a very good floor for them. I think that 9-7 in the NFC will make the playoffs as the 7th seed. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think all 4 teams from this division could make the playoffs, which makes them even more of a sleeper, makes their task, the road ahead even more difficult. But if they can get over some humps, they can get over some teams, they can kind of turn over this, change this possession and get more turnovers. And if they can finish drives at a higher rate on offense, I think that they will be able to easily add 4 to maybe 5 wins this season. That is going to do it for us here on Second and Short. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to this episode of our Sleepers and Contenders about the Arizona Cardinals. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Stay up to date on everything we got going on. 2 episodes every week. As the season dips on, we're going to be talking about some more fun things. Plus, we're going to be adding fantasy football from our personal opinions. Hit that like button down below. Show us your love. And jump down in the comments. We are very interactive. We will respond to anything you guys say. And we appreciate it. But if you guys kind of want to hit us up in other areas, Aaron, where can they find us?
Well, first of all, check us out wherever you can get podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, stuff like that. And of course on YouTube. Also, we're on all social media, Facebook, Instagram. We've got a lot of posts going up. We're talking about discussion points, news updates, things like that. We'll have polls in the story. Twitter, same thing. We got polls every week. And then feel free to send us a message wherever you want, whichever platform. Just hit us up.
Alrighty, and thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you guys later on this week as we talk about the other NFC sleeper. You guys all have a good night.